Five-star experience and that culture starts at the top. It starts with the owner. And if the owner isn't, honestly, if they're not really motivated that way, if they don't understand what five patient experience is, if they've never, desired that, either professionally or personally, that's going to become an issue. But for best practices with five-star experiences, it starts with them.
Post-treatment education is everything. What you're gonna expect, this is what you're gonna do. I even have pictures of patients, the most horrific patients post treatments that you can imagine, so that they can understand this can happen and it's okay. We're gonna guide you every step of the way, and that's what leads to trust and long-term relationships.
Whatever patients want, they get, for the most part. We set, in the morning, we'll set things out for patients to eat. We have little snacks for them throughout the day. We treat them like they're coming into our home. And that's what makes a huge difference. They're just not another person coming in.
Well, good evening and welcome to the Business of Aesthetics Annual Expert Panel Webinar. This empowering discussion will help you navigate challenges, leverage opportunities, and build a thriving career in aesthetics. Thank you for joining us and our panel of renowned industry leaders as they share actionable strategies, best practices, and valuable insights to tackle the unique leadership challenges faced by aesthetic professionals today. Welcome to our panelists for this evening for the webinar, Keetha Hanlin, Louis FRISINA, and Dr. Linette Rivera. It is great to have the three of you with us. Thank you for taking the time and sharing your pearls of wisdom with our viewers and, listeners. Today, with our Business of Aesthetics Expert Panel Webinar, we're going to be discussing, I love this title. I mean, it's just such an important part of everything that we do in aesthetics. It's the patient journey. How to deliver five-star experiences and build loyalty. And along with that, we're going to probably get into patient retention and handling complaint, all kinds of aspects of that. So this is a live event, so please engage with your peers, ask questions, and we are confident that you will leave equipped with, as I said before, actionable strategies and some great best practices that you can go ahead and implement immediately. So, but before I dive in, let me just ask you this. When potential patients are in your area search for treatments you offer, does your practice actually show up? Or are they finding your competitors instead? This is a major challenge for many aesthetic practice owners. You might be offering amazing services, but if you're not visible online, you're missing out on a steady stream of new patients. The good news, really good news, there's a fix. With the right digital marketing strategy covering local SEO, targeted ads, and funnel-based content marketing, you can not only attract more inquiries, but convert them into actual patients walking through the doors. And here's the best part. I'm going to encourage you, I want you to stick around to the end because we've got something special for you, something that can help take your practice's online presence to a completely different level. But I'm going to leave that as a bit of a teaser, and then we're going to go ahead and I'll circle back around that closer to the end. But let me take a few minutes just before we dive in to just share a bit about our panelists. And I'll just lead off with myself. My name is Michael Walker. I am your host for this evening. As a leadership coach, professional mediator, and facilitator, I'm passionate about helping set leaders and their teams up for success that matters, helping them lead themselves well so they can lead others well. And as I like to say, so they get to go home at night and feel good about how they'll handle themselves and others. Our first panelist tonight is Keetha Hanlin. Keetha brings over 25 years of clinical and educational experience to the stage with deep expertise in vascular and aesthetic medicine. She has trained healthcare professionals across the country and currently serves as senior clinical advisor for MediPharm's Accelera and Celera Safe. As a medical spa owner since 2002, Keetha combines practical insight with clinical depth, making her a very respected voice in the field. Our second panelist tonight is Louis FRISINA. Louis has spent 40 years of experience in business development and entrepreneurship within the biotech, aesthetic, and regenerative medicine markets. He previously served as president of Fisher Scientific, a research products company. Louis has established and sold Restylane, a dermal filler, to Medicis Pharmaceuticals for a significant amount of $360 million, handling all regulatory, clinical trial, and market development processes. And I love this. He's visited over 2,000 aesthetic medical practices globally. That is a lot of practices. I'm sure we've got some great information we're going to be able to bring from that. And our third panelist tonight is Dr. Linette Rivera. Dr. Rivera is the founder of Glands Endocrinology Aesthetics Wellness, a premier medical clinic located in Miami, Florida. Board certified in internal medicine endocrinology, she has over a decade of experience specializing in women's hormones, menopause, thyroid disorders, and diabetes. Dr. Rivera blends traditional and alternative medicine to deliver personalized, holistic care. She is a global speaker at leading organizations, actively trains providers on aesthetic techniques as well as on laser safety. Through her work with D&H Research Center, she contributes to innovative hormone and metabolic research, all the while promoting wellness and confidence. What great two words to put together, Doctor. Wellness and confidence. Isn't it so much about what we do in the aesthetics field? So you're going to see, thank you for the three of you being with us tonight. Thank you for all that wisdom that you're going to share with us. We so appreciate that. And you'll see on your screen now the main points for today's discussion that I'm confident, as I say, we'll have an amazing and very insightful webinar. We also have some great questions lined up for our panel, and I'm looking forward to just bringing out some of the gold that they have to share with us, and hopefully it'll make a difference for you, yourself, your team, and your practice. I'd also like to encourage you to connect with us through the chat. The chat is live and open. And if you have any questions, please put them into the chat. I will do my very best to respond to every question during the course of the webinar. But if we have a couple we don't get to, I just want to assure you that Leanna, our podcast manager, will actually capture the questions, reach back out to our panelists, get the answer, and get back to you. So nothing falls through the cracks, nothing hits the floor. Everybody's questions get answered. Also, throw some comments up. If you hear something that's catchy your attention or something you want to add colored commentary to, please do that. Happy faces and thumbs up are always appreciated. And that is kind of takes me, I'm going to stop my screen share here, and I'm going to bring us back to the group, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with the questions. And I'm going to start tonight with, that's an interesting word, isn't it? I'm going to start with Keetha. And Keetha, the question that I have for you to lead off with is, with over 2 decades in aesthetic medicine, how have you seen the patient journey evolve? What a great question. And what do today's patients expect most from their experience?
Yeah, I love this question because so much has evolved over the past couple of decades. I mean, when I first started, in aesthetics, there was essentially a couple of products. I mean, there was, collagen for lips, and then Botox was just launching in 2002. And, I remember I was afraid to even inject crow's feet at that time, because it was indicated just for the glabellar. And so, patients were even reluctant to come in, to get Botox. And that's so shocking to see, now, because it's a commodity at this point. Everybody has to offer Botox, even though there's not, a huge amount of profit to be made in it anymore. Because when I first started, there was considerable profit. And, with the advancements of even just the hyaluronics when they first came out, I was so excited, so that we didn't have to use collagen any longer, do any type of skin testing. And, the patients loved that part of it. So you really saw that medical spa, business start to really grow. And the education, really started to grow, and the marketing efforts and all that. And Allergan back then just did such a great job at branding Botox, because even if I have a patient that comes in that wants Dysport, they're still on the books for Botox, and then they come in and say, "Oh wait, no, I wanted Dysport." I mean, just the companies have done such a great job at branding themselves, and then um, and getting it out there, the education out there to the masses, so that now I feel like if I recently had a group of women that came into my office that were in their 50s. The majority of them had never even had a facial. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, where have you ladies been hiding? Like, how have you gotten to like 50 something and you've never had Botox or filler or anything? Like, how is this even possible? They had heard about it, but they were so reluctant to go in and get something done because since the beginning to now, we've got so many med spas. We've got so many different injectors, so many different injecting techniques. Groupon kind of watered some things down, out there to where you had some patients jumping around from practitioner to practitioner. There were inconsistencies, I saw in faces that would come in, that would say, I want this or I want that, or I need this dissolve. I don't like this. And I would tell them, you stick with one, because everybody has a different eye, and the way that they see a face. So if you go to 5 different practitioners, for lips, the lips aren't going to be, the best lips. So it's been interesting to see the evolution of aesthetic medicine, for the past 20 years, as I stated, just with patient education, with the fillers getting better, more options for the patients. And I do appreciate, some of the regulations as well, that continue to evolve, across the country. And I know AmSpa is very involved in that. And I greatly appreciate Alex's efforts to do that, because I think that's really important, is making sure, to go to a provider that is well trained and they know what they're doing, because there's a lot of stuff out there that's a mess. And for me as an educator, for years, this is so important, is just educating the masses is huge, but also educating the practitioners that are putting needles into patients' faces.
Thank you, Keitha. I'd say it is amazing how fast it has moved. I was thinking from my perspective, I kind of look at it, not having had any of those treatments, but when I look at when it first started, I would have kind of called it like it was a series of I'm going to use the word vain treatments. It was like it wasn't, it was just something. It's only something, but it's become a lifestyle choice. And to Dr. Rivera, it's a lifestyle choice that has evolved into a holistic experience. Like, it's so beautiful what's happened with it, and it's become transactional. You still have to do the things you do with the injector and all this thing, but the relational space about people and the building blocks have become such, and that's really, it seems like that's what separates the girls, the women from the girls, the men from the boys, in terms of being able to price for that experience, not just for the injection, and evolving that way. I don't know, that's kind of my thought on that, but I can see like 20 years, you just basically said it's gone from 0 to 100. That's amazing. That really is. Louis, I've got a question for you. And with your global perspective, I love having visited over 2,000 aesthetic practices. Now, we'd like you to just run through them numerically, all the ones you've been to. No, I'm just kidding. Having visited over 2,000 aesthetic practices, what common traits have you observed in clinics that consistently deliver 5-star patient experiences? That's a great question with that sample size.
Yeah, been a long journey since 1997. So I'm showing a little of my age tonight on the screen, but hopefully I can share some of those experiences and they're helpful. As I said, I've been around the world from Shanghai to Bakersfield, California, and I've seen all the good and all the bad. I've been privileged to see truly five-star experience best practices out there. I'll give you a little insight on that. First of all, however you define that five-patient star experience, which is probably the first thing that a practice needs to really analyze, at what level are you comfortable both creating an experience and retaining those patients, in that practice? That five-star experience and that culture starts at the top. It starts with the owner. And if the owner isn't, honestly, if they're not really motivated that way, if they don't understand what five-patient experience is, if they've never, desired that, either professionally or personally, that's going to become an issue. But for best practices with five-star experiences, it starts with them. And that culture, starting at the top, is an incredible individuals. They are highly meticulous. They are highly, besides being to, they look at every single aspect of the practice. They look at the quality of the cleaning in the facility, the way in which the pillows are shaped. Everything has to be perfectly in shape. It's like managing as a conductor of an orchestra, is how I look at it. And they're basically making sure that the oboe and the violin and the cello and the percussions are all in sync. Otherwise, that total aggregated experience isn't going to come across from a perceived way to the clients. The second thing that they do is they have managers who they require deliver that patient experience, and it is part of their compensation. It is part of a qualitative analysis that they do. They watch the metrics associated with five-star experience. Doesn't have to be a brain surgeon to figure that out relative to either patient reviews, the currency of those reviews, the volume of those reviews, and when there's a bad review, how that particular practice manages getting that resolution in and so forth. I call five-star experience the protocolization of a practice. These five-star practices don't just wing it. They have detailed protocols. I have one practice that has a 13-step protocol of how to take care of the bathrooms 3 times a day. And they have cameras and they have monitors going around, or as I say, the owner does what I call MBWA, management by walking around, and they ensure that the culture that they've set up, the metrics that they've put together are enforced on a minute-to-minute, hour-to-hour basis when that business is in operation. And that doesn't mean just in person, but also on the phone. The other thing that they do is they do tremendous amount of training and role playing. They will bring in a white glove service person from the Ritz-Carlton or the St. Regis Hotel and show them how to deal with people who pay $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a night, and how they deal with that. How do they deal with the resolution of those problems? How they deal with difficult. Some of these patients are difficult. We all know who these aesthetic patients are, and they're always right. There is no discussion about right or wrong and so forth. The patient is always right. We've got to resolve this. It doesn't matter what we feel about them. This is not a personal situation. We need to resolve and have resolution to make these patients happy and to make sure that we don't get dinged on a bad review and so forth. And so there's a number of these types of things that happen, but it really happens from the top. And it's also, the last thing is these practices that manage this, again, don't wing it. They look at the constitution of what makes up their patient database. And so they look at it and try to find things within that patient database that might be common and things that they can do, as an example, to improve that patient experience and journey during the day and hopefully on a continuing basis. And so, for instance, I had a practice in London who identified that about 37% of their patients were Arab. A lot of them come in the summer. They chose to do that. It happened to be a practice across from Harrods and so forth. They recognized that this was an important part of their patient database. They all sat down and figured out what they needed to do. In that practice, they make available prayer rugs at a specific time during the day when these people are praying to Allah and stuff. So it's that level of attention to detail. The last thing is, and I'll call it, because I'm older, old school things. It really is nice when somebody greets you at a door. It's really nice when they come into a reception area and the receptionist gets off their butt and stands up and greets the patient and knows the patient by name without having to dilly-dally with papers in front of them, look at the computer, make sure they're looking at the right hour. All of those things look like you're not doing the right thing, that you're not organized, that you don't appreciate me. All of those things at the beginning make a difference. It was already explained. This is a commoditizing market. It's the patient experience and the service that's differentiating the best class practices out there from those who are part of the Vast Blue Regiment.
Thank you, Louis. Louis, I just to our listeners, our viewers, like as I thought would happen, the fire hose has now been turned on.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of great stuff coming at you that you're so I really want to encourage you. You're not going to capture all of it in one sitting here, but just to capture some sound bites, something you're hearing from Louis, from Keetha, from Dr. Rivera, hey, that's something I can dig into. That's where a starting point. That's what I want to look at. And then be able to and grab a hold of that. You're going to be able to then, of course, be able to reach back to these people as well. So I just don't try and get it all down. Just get to the things that are catching your attention that you can start to be intentional with change that you would like to incorporate into your practice and your leadership model. And I love MBWA. I love that management but walking around. That's beautiful. Dr. Rivera, I've got a question for you. Given your expertise in blending conventional and alternative medicine, how do you leverage personalization in consultations and treatments to enhance patient satisfaction and really the greatest gift of that, long-term loyalty?
Mhm. Well, thank you first for having me in the panel. It's a great opportunity to not only, learn about peers, but also share what we have learned throughout the years. In my case, I have been in the industry for almost 12, 13 years. And I, like a lot of other providers, I blend traditional medicine, which we take insurance, and then we blend it with aesthetics. So when it comes to endocrinology practicing, I'm going to divide it on both sides. I think personalization is one of the key aspects of what we do. So it has to be, I agree with Louis, there should be protocols for, the main areas. And when it comes to providers, it's going to be more of, we're key in to what the patient is saying and what the patient wants the experience to be. So the first thing I do when I do endocrinology or any medicine, because I still do the medical part, but it's kind of like a med spa wellness facility. So I start understanding the patient as a whole, right? And it sounds cliche, but it's true. Patients come in and they want to be heard. Traditional medicine, doctors have 10 minutes because the patient was late and they're trying to wrap up because I have another patient in the waiting room. So it's kind of like you still have to try to do that, but try to learn a little bit about the patient. Learning the patient as a whole when it comes to traditional medicine, includes their labs, their lifestyle, how many kids they have, do they have a stressful job, do they exercise or not, well, how do they eat? You look at the patients like that and they start feeling very unique. Not that we do it because we want to impress them, but it helps our overall goal. And like you said, long-term loyalty, right? I think that helps me organize a therapy that is going to help me first of all, for them to be compliant, because there's no point on me telling you, this is what I recommend, but it doesn't fit with your lifestyle, right? And you're not going to be compliant. And then second of all, it helps me manage better than their conditions, and it helps them understand that my goal is to make them feel better and make them and their surroundings just feel like they're feeling better. In terms of aesthetics, when we look at the aesthetic practice, I do exactly the same approach, but it's basically kind of like not in terms of blood work, but in terms of like, what is your downtime? What is, getting very deep and personal with the patient in terms of their life. What downtime do you have? It's not the same treating a regular mom that is a stay-at-home mom versus treating somebody that's on the news or has a stressful job that is on Zoom all the time. So kind of getting that very special with the patient so that we can get to know them and design that specific therapy that they need. When you do that, and that's one of the examples, downtime, right? Because it's all the patients ask when it comes to aesthetics, they're like, what's the downtime? What's the downtime? They get scared about that. So that's kind of an example. Now, obviously, also kind of like understanding in a deeper level, what is it that you want to accomplish, right? So some patients come in, they want to look very natural. They don't want to look overdone. So my approach is going to be different to somebody that comes and says, I want my face completely blocked. I want to have no wrinkles, no facial expressions. I want it frozen. So those key questions are going to be there to tailor the treatment that you want for the patient. And ultimately, what's going to happen is, like you said, long-term, uh,
Loyalty.
loyalty, long-term loyalty. But at the same time, our outcomes are going to be better because if I can look at a patient, and for me, I always give this example. They can have, a little mark here, a pigmentation on their face, and they're like, I want this gone. But us as providers, we look at the patient as a whole, right? If I treat something else because I think they're gonna look better, but I still leave that mark there, they're not gonna be happy. So I think when it comes to any type of medicine that we do, but especially aesthetics, we need to listen to what the patients are telling us that they want. And that is, I think, in medicine, what has been lost throughout the years. And I think that's one of the biggest complaints the patients have about healthcare. And aesthetics is no different. I think when the patients come in with their reviews, like you were saying, 5-star reviews are everything. And I think that's one of the most mentioned things. The doctor listened to me. She understood what I wanted. I had great results. And that's what we're all striving for.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Rivera. I love how there's a saying that came to mind as you were sharing that. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Mm-hmm.
And that really captures the essence. I mean, you've got to be great at what you do and what you are, but then it's at meeting the customer they're at. I always think it's easy to meet somebody's needs. We just, this is what I want, this is what I do.
Mm-hmm.
But to exceed them, we have to be ask more questions. We have to be a little more intuitive around that. But I think, and I think that's what I'm hearing from Louis as well and Keitha, is that it's about being actually unexpectedly delighting the customer, where we do something that we saw something in that holistic perspective that they didn't even think or consider,
Mm-hmm.
but we see that in that process of what they're trying to achieve or get out of the process. And I think to Louis' point, you can't unexpectedly delight if you haven't got the type of, as you're saying, the protocol structure that scripts and structures things, but you have to have that, what you're talking about, and Keith is talking about, the depth of relational capital that goes with that, and then be really good at what you do. So yeah, thank you, Dr. Rivera. I love that. Keith, a question for you. What are some key elements you've implemented in your med spa to create a high touch, loyalty building patient experience? Now, we're using a term, high touch, and this is one of those things, we assume that everybody knows what that means or think they do. I think that's a term. I'd like you, if you'd unpack that a little bit, just to make sure we have a common denominator on that. But what are some of the key elements you've implemented in your med spa to create a high touch, loyalty building patient experience? Oh, did we lose you, Keitha? Oh, Oh, you're okay.
I don't know what's going on. Sorry. I don't know what's happening. I've got all of a sudden I can see the skies getting dark out there. So I don't know if there's
Okay. Yeah, you're freezing there on us.
my apologies.
That's okay. Just turn your screen off just for now and see if that helps. Just turn your video off. Sometimes it's the that'll help. No. Okay, Keitha, I'm going to circle back around to you. Don't leave. Just see if we can get that sorted out. Sometimes, if you wanted to try, you could go out and come back in. Sometimes that helps, but we definitely have you frozen at this end. So you have a nice smile. You're frozen with a nice smile. So okay, so Louis, I'm going to circle back to you then. And the question I have for you, Louis, is for practices looking to grow. What's your advice on scaling without compromising the personalized experience patients expect? And isn't that the $1 million question?
Yes, I think if you're talking about scaling relative to either adding, there's two scalings that occur in a practice. One is scaling within an existing facility, and then there's the scaling, and that involves different providers at different levels. And then there's the scaling of the practice into multiple sites. And the multiple sites is important because I think, as everybody might know out there, from a valuation and a private equity standpoint, having more than one practice increases the overall multiple range that you're going to end up being in versus if you're a single practice for many reasons. Let's talk about the internal scaling. Internal scaling, again, is, to some extent about protocols, and you're going to hear that, resonate for me. You have a very diverse and, one could argue, not the most optimum employment employee opportunities out there. We know how hard it is to both acquire and retain good employees out there, and that's a big issue. And they come in sometimes with not the experience that you're expecting, whether they're injectors or they're surgeons, or they're at the front desk, or they're patient care coordinators, or they're in the administrative side. So protocols allow for a plan book, a guide wire, a support, a crutch, however you want to describe that, to help the practice add additional practitioners or add additional people in a way that allows for a more consistent, again, going back to the 5-star experience, a more consistent, accretive addition of that employee, of that human capital, as we call it, into the practice. And so they have, they've identified, they have 50 aspects of the job descriptions. They have KPIs. They have KRAs. These are words to basically describe objectives and job responsibilities for each of these. And that helps in this market. We have a very difficult employment market. We all are facing it. It's not the world that I grew up in, to say the least. And I won't comment any more on that, but it requires much more control and much more management and monitoring when you're scaling internally by adding either additional individuals or additional equipment, and those protocols help a lot and so forth. Similarly, if I understand the question well enough, scaling to a second practice and so forth, that one is a lot easier for me to do. If you've got a best practice owner, a best practice manager, they're going to deploy their 2 or 3 managers from that existing practice into that second location. That's what best companies do out there, whether it's Dick's Sporting Goods or whatever. They take their best managers, they put them on the road for 6 weeks. They train up all of those other existing people in a like situation, and basically creating, or attempting to create that culture that they had developed in that in the mothership. And so it's a difficult the scaling these days isn't as easy as it was in the olden days, and that's because of the, quite frankly, the diversity and the quality of the employee pool.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you, Lydia. Absolutely. Things, what's that saying? We're not in Kansas anymore.
No.
No, things have changed, but to your point, consistency, attention to detail, and having a clear vision and plan of where you want to take something, and in some regards, just reverse engineering your best practices. I love how you set that up. Keith,
Am I still on speaker?
what
Can you
was
hear
that?
me?
Yep.
Yeah, I can hear you, Louis. Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one other thing that I forgot. In the scaling of a second facility and so forth, they actually put together a plan. And they have the plan starts off with a 6 week or an 8 week plan, and it's a day-to-day plan. What are we going to do on this first day? What are we going to do on the second day? What are we going to do on the third day for the first 8 weeks? And then they have a quarterly plan, a semi-annual plan, and an annual plan that basically, again, is a guide wire to ensure that the things that they're trying to imbue or integrate into a new facility or scale up is actually implemented. And so these things are highly, highly managed. These aesthetic practices are not your old mom's med spas anymore. These are very sophisticated, very complex businesses, very much like the ones that I've dealt with outside of the aesthetics industry, outside of the service industry, in biotech products and medical devices and other things like that.
Thank you, Louis. Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry for that interruption.
No, that's fine. That was great. I think you just reminded me of Joe Gibbs. He used to be the head coach of the Washington then Redskins, and they always scripted their first three plays because if you don't, they don't. He didn't want his players thinking about making the play. He wanted to think about playing the game, and setting yourself up for success kind of looks that way. Keitha, how we doing? Let's see how you're doing. And the question I'll just circle back around with you is, so what are some key elements you've implemented in your med spa to create a high touch, loyalty building patient experience?
Can you hear me okay now?
Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's
It's okay.
You're like Robbie Hancock right now. Remember that video in the 80s? It was just like very robotic. I'm like, never fails, right? We had technical difficulties at the beginning, and here we are. Okay, so
well, thank you for supporting me in the technical difficulties. Appreciate that.
So I feel you. Okay, my apologies. Can you please ask me the question again?
Sure.
Every time you would ask me, it would like break up. Sorry. No
problem, Keitha. That's no problem at all. What are some key elements you've implemented in your med spa to create a high touch, loyalty building patient experience?
Awesome. Well, when I first started doing this, back in 2002, and actually it was a little bit earlier than that, kind of like Louis, when you were like 1997, I'm dating myself, like that was back in the day, we did a lot of Obagi, the Obagi program, and we had microdermabrasion that was happening back then. And, back then it was easy, it was pretty simple, with patients. It was very one-on-one, I felt like. And then as things evolved, even in my own office, and, when I first started, I went real big. And this is the thing that I tell practitioners now across the country. You don't need to start off real big, because it's not about the quantity and the amount of rooms that you have, the furniture, whatever. It's the quality of the service that you are providing, to these women and men. And so when I had the 3,600 square foot place, and we had 14 employees, and we were just buzzing and moving along, and we were, I was working 60 hours a week, at that time. And we had a lot of fun doing it. When I moved to my second location, and it became a very small, we call it the VIP location. because there's no front desk. Somebody does manage the books, but there are about 3 treatment rooms, and I actually answer that door at that facility. And the patients absolutely love coming to that facility because they get so much one-on-one time with me that they feel very special. So they will not even schedule at the other location where there's so much movement, buzzing around, and the women don't want to be seen. And so it's interesting, you know, what people prefer. And at that location, I actually schedule everybody anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, period. Even if it's a Botox patient, I spend a full 30 minutes with them. And to Dr. Rivera's point, I know these women. Like, I've known them for over a decade. I know who their kids are. Like, I remember when I first started out, I would write notes about patients, who their kids were, how old they were, you know, what do they do for a living? Like, just personal things about them that I could remember. And over the years, you know, these kids have grown up. They're, you know, they're graduating high school. They're, you know, they're out of college now. I know these women's and men's lives very well. So, you know, for me and my staff, because I've had the same people working with me for a decade, it's like when you come into our facility, yes, we have, you know, the protocols for the staff. Like, if you start, this is how you run the front desk. Like, everybody needs to know what everybody's position is. I know what everybody's position is. It's not uncommon for me to call a person back. I know what my schedule is. So if I have the opportunity to go and open that door and somebody's in the lobby waiting, I'll bring them back. And and you know, everybody's looking at them going, oh, they get that treatment, because we have a physician across, you know, the way, and they don't do that. The MA comes and gets those patients. But then when they see me, you know, these other patients going, wait, am I not that special? Like, why didn't I get the special touch? So we do a lot of things, like even front desk, to Louie's point. My front desk girl, she gets up and she walks around, she'll make a coffee, she'll get them a glass of wine, you know, water, whatever patients want, they get, for the most part. We set, you know, in the morning, we'll set things out for patients to eat. We have little snacks for them throughout the day. We treat them like they're coming into our home. And that's what makes a huge difference. They're just not another person coming in. And for me, being, you know, doing this as long as I have, I love to spend time with people now. You know, I don't want to, you know, just keep rotating patients all throughout the day. I went from seeing like 25 people in a day, you know, I don't even mind if it's like half that number now, because it's the quality of that time that I'm spending with people now.
Thank you, Keitha, and your signal was great. So there you go. We're good to
Woo!
go. You're okay on that. Yeah.
Got through it.
Yeah. You know, I remember my background is hotel industry and in high-end properties. And we shifted the entire focus of the intimate side of the relationship with the guest. We empowered the housekeepers, the cleaning staff, to be able to do things that they knew was unique about the guest. So when they're cleaning the room and they happen to notice that in the garbage, you know, Mr. Smith had a Mars bar wrapper and a Coke can in his garbage, the next night when he'd come into his room, what would be sitting on the counter? And and just going for those little things. And so your front end, your staff at the front end are the housekeepers, so to speak. And empowering them, giving them the tools. So we had a chain of flower shops, and giving people the permission to just be creative without going crazy. Permission to be creative in ways that unexpectedly delight the customer. And man, it's so much fun. And as you say, we get to an older age, it just becomes, that's the fun part, is the relational side. But thank you for that, Keitha. Let me go.
Do you mind if I add one more thing to just how busy we can get? And, you know, we had brought on an app probably 8 years ago. I had my own personalized app for the practice. And it was, we really tried to get patients to schedule on that app. We couldn't get them to do it. We spent all this money and we were so high tech, you know, and nobody wanted to use it. They wanted to talk to my front desk girl on the phone because they knew them well and they knew exactly what they needed. Or I just want Keetha to tell me what to do. I just want to come in. I just want her to tell me what to do. I don't even know what to, put on for my appointment. So again, going back to, we've gotten to a place in society where yes, everything is on our phones and on our computers. And are we really getting a true person on the other end when it comes to customer service? People still love talking to people, they love seeing them, they still love relationships.
You're 100%, Keith. Living on this planet with people, it was never designed to be a Lone Ranger sport. It's always about building relations. Unless even if you're Tom Hanks and you're on a deserted island, eventually you're going to invent a friend named Wilson, and then you're going to get mad at him and kick him across the island. So, life is full of great challenges and opportunities. It's that kind of that one day at a time. Thank you, Keith. I'm glad you added that. Dr. Rivera, I'm going to head up to you. And the question I have for you is, what role does post-treatment education and follow-up play in building long-term relationships with patients?
Yeah, so I think post treatment education is key for what we do, especially when we're doing, injectables or laser treatments. But I think for anything, when it comes to, for example, even my medicine practice, I would say just having the patients learn about their condition, which in aesthetics is the same thing, right? Sometimes I'm sure you guys have seen this where a patient comes in and they're like, well, I want to inject Botox and I want it right here on this area because I don't like that line. We have a social media kind of culture where patients, learn through social media, learn through Google Doc or whatever, Dr. Google or whatever you call it. And them seeing that you are recommending something, you're explaining why, you are giving them a reason why you're using this product versus another product, or using a laser treatment versus something that they saw online that might not even be real. Sometimes we see this before and afters on social media. I'm like, I mean, you don't even know if this is AI now. So I think that's key for the patients to understand what they're getting done. And first, they're going to trust you because you're explaining the why. And trust is everything for any type of relationship that you have, right? Especially with these patients that come to you. Sometimes they see us on social media. Sometimes they just go to our website. They don't know us. We can seem intimidating because they see us doing all these treatments. And when you take the time to say, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is your post-treatment care. In our case, we have a messaging system where we message the patients the next day, make sure they're okay. Do you have a bruise? Do you not have a bruise? How's your skin? If they're, because I do a lot of lasers, so patients can get intimidated. They wake up and their face is swollen. They're like, oh my God, is this normal? I see this every day. So for me, you can look horrendous the next day and I'm like, oh yeah, that's fine. But the patients freak out. So post-treatment education is everything. What you're gonna expect, this is what you're gonna do. I even have pictures of patients, the most horrific patients post treatments that you can imagine, so that they can understand this can happen and it's okay. We're gonna guide you every step of the way. And that's what leads to trust and long-term relationships. When we talk about follow-ups, right? Like we were saying, I do it myself on a lot of the patients, but I also have my staff do it. So even if they get a facial, our esthetician is texting them, are you okay? Is there anything happen? I think designing something that I started on this practice, which I didn't do in Tampa, was that I started designing aesthetic plans, right? Because sometimes patients come in and they say, I just want Botox and that's it. But like, providers, we're seeing the whole face, we're evaluating your skin, we're evaluating volume, we're evaluating, pigmentation. So I think This time I have more recurring patients getting more treatments besides the one they come in for, because you're designing this whole treatment plan that allows for them to follow up constantly in the clinic. It's not only for you to get one treatment. We have, wellness. Maybe you need, hormones. Maybe you need weight loss. Maybe you need, you can incorporate anything in your business, because when you do wellness, which we all do, even if we do only injectables, it's still wellness. It still increases our patients, self-esteem. It helps their relationships with other people. So I think all of that involves wellness. And I think that's key for us to get not only patients that come back, but also patients that are going to call their friends and they want them to experience what they've experienced, because they've had such a good experience. So I think that's key. That's one of the basic things that we should incorporate is educating patients in anything that we're going to do.
Thank you, Dr. Rivera. I think that that whole concept really of, again, community of not looking at the patient in one dimension. I remember hearing on another webinar, one of the practitioners said, "Yeah, I had this lady. She looked in the mirror. She says, when I look in the mirror, I'm not familiar with who that is."
Mm-hmm.
I thought, wow, that's really profound. I mean, I think we all go through that as part of our identity and change and growth. But I thought, and so it's not about one thing. It's that's holistic all day long. That's the self-esteem, that's the confidence, it's whatever, maybe it's the wrinkles, whatever, I've had 3 kids or whatever, all those moving parts. But I think it's such a beautiful thing that you can actually participate in somebody getting reintroduced to their true selves, I guess would be the way I'd put it. I'm not sure that's
And a lot of patients say, I don't know if this you hear this, they tend to say, well, I don't feel my age. I look at myself in the mirror and I don't feel my age. We live in a society now where we live longer, we are healthier. When they put these pictures of the Golden Girls and they compare them to Jennifer Lopez, and you're like, how did this happen? Obviously, we know it's not only olive oil. So it's patients, that's how they feel. Social media influences a lot of how the patients think, and we just have to have that in mind.
Yeah, that's true. I just looking at the time, and you guys have had so many great, I can't believe your answers have been very rich. There's a lot of pieces moving here, and I just so appreciate that. We've got on with us Whitney and Leanna, and I think, guys, we need to talk to Keitha and Louis and Dr. Rivera and see if we can do a part 2, because I know we had lots of more questions to consider that are great questions. And I'm sure that our listeners and viewers would love to hear them, but I can't do that here now. But I'm going to have to just shift gears here. If you just give me I want to just give me a second here. As we're talking about creating high touch experiences and personalization and well, we didn't really get into difficult patients and turning negative experiences into positive ones. And I think that's certainly in our next, our part 2, if you guys are up for it, part 2, we dig into that and get more into that. That reminds me of, I used to own a chain of flower shops, and we knew we were going to have customer complaints, and I actually empowered my team. I said, for every complaint we get, if you can convert the complaint into somebody saying thank you, and they bring a new customer, I'll give you a weekend spa retreat. My program was so successful, I had to change it in 6 months or I was going to go bankrupt, but it was awesome. And just finding ways for people to fully own the journey. And I think I would love to get more into that with you guys. But I do have, time is kind of coming to an end. And as I think you recall that I told you, as our viewers and listeners, we have a special gift for you. And the gift, as I promised you, is from the founder of the Business of Aesthetics Expert Panel Webinar. His name is Narain Arulraja. And Narain is the CEO of Equimarketing. They're a digital marketing organization specifically for doctors and medical professionals in aesthetic practices. And as a token of our appreciation of your time and your participation, Noreen is offering you a free marketing strategy meeting with Lila Stone. And Lila is the Business of Aesthetics Marketing Director for Equa Marketing. And Lila has established herself as a trusted expert in digital marketing. And I can tell you she's passionate about empowering medical professionals with the marketing tools and knowledge to stand out in this very competitive market, as you all know. You can see from the slide in front of you that she has considerable specializations. As I mentioned, this is a gift from Narain, and it's really his passion. There's no tricks or hooks here. He's not sure there's no hidden costs. If you do this, you have to buy this. There's dating myself, but there's no set of never dull steak knives here. But if you're in the chat, you'll see a link that you can go to be able to sign up for the session. You'll also see you can scan it on, if you're not using your phone for this webinar, you could scan that query code. And the big thing that I think is really important is that when Lila does this, she actually spends about 6 hours in advance looking at your website, going through all the permutation, what you're doing, how you're doing it, looking at all the platform, looking at your SEO. I mean, Google changes their algorithm now like 6,000 times a year. It's like, if you're an expert in marketing, then this thing might not be that value added to you. But if you're not, I can tell you this would be a great opportunity for you. But you can go ahead and click on that link. And I always kind of weigh these kind of opportunities through 2 questions. I don't know if this makes sense to you. It does for me. First question is, what's at risk to do this? Well, really and literally the only thing is your time, and your time is valuable and important, and I appreciate that, but that's what that question answers. I think the second question is probably more important, and the question is, what's at risk if you don't? Oh, we've heard a lot today about 5-star, setting yourself up for success, being that 5-star practice, and it starts with your online platform. And I just encourage you to grab a hold of this, get some great information, get some insight that can set you up for success that I've seen already in many practices who've taken advantage of this. But first of all, as I kind of shift gears, I want to say thank you to our expert panel, Keetha Hanlin and FRISINA and Dr. Linette Rivera. You guys offer just so much insight, some great, unbelievable best practices, and without doubt, actionable content. I kind of like to look at this, that collectively you made the complex simple, the hidden visible, and the difficult arguably easy. And secondly, to all of our attendees, thank you for the privilege of your time. And without you, we don't grow together. And when we don't grow together, we don't get to set each other up for success. So keep coming back. A reminder to like, share, and review us on your favorite social media and be a part of someone else's success. We love reviews and we like follows. So until next time, and on behalf of our expert panel, keep striving for excellence, 5-star excellence, and 5-star exceptional patient care. Until next time, Mike Walker. We'll see you then.